Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Bradley Beal. The Timberwolves are interested in Bradley Beal. Is it realistic? What are the pros and cons of the Wolves potentially adding Beal? We'll peek ahead at Summer League again as well today. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hopefully you're having a fantastic week so far. We're only 2 days away from the Timberwolves playing basketball, kind of, sort of, in Summer League uniforms. There's like 5 actual Timberwolves players on the team. We've talked about it a lot the last few days. Thursday afternoon, Timberwolves kick off Las Vegas Summer League. We'll talk a bit about that toward the end of the show today. But if you missed the primer on the Summer League roster, we did that on Friday. So go ahead and check that out. Today, though, I want to talk about the latest, we'll call it a rumor. The Timberwolves were mentioned as a potential suitor for Bradley Beal. We'll talk about why, how, is it realistic? What could that look like? And the pros and cons of potentially adding somebody of Bradley Beal's caliber to the roster. That will be the focus of the show today. So get ready for that. I have some thoughts. First, though, big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. You can watch on YouTube. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. If you are new to the show, we do this every single day, Monday through Friday, all year. And then in July, it is July. In August, we'll go down to 3 shows a week. But that's the only time all year. There's like a 6-week period that we do 3 shows a week. But the rest of the year, 5 times a week, Monday through Friday, your daily fix of Timberwolves right here at Locked On Wolves. And again, you can find this show anywhere you listen to podcasts. All right. So today, it's the Bradley Beal show. That's what we're going to talk about today. The rumor, if you missed it, was from Jake Fisher, or is from Jake Fisher, who is reporting, and of course, Jake Fisher, had been at Bleacher Report, had been at, where was he most recently? Yahoo, I think. He works for the Stein line now. We talked about Mark Stein had some Wolves-related reporting a couple days ago about the Suns' interest in Naz Reid in a sign and trade prior to Naz re-upping with Minnesota, and also the Naz Reid contract's impact on the Miles Turner, what ultimately was a sign and trade with Miles Turner going from Indiana to Milwaukee. So Jake Fisher works for Mark Stein now, and he is reporting all about the Bradley Beal potential free agency. There's an expectation the Phoenix Suns are going to buy out Bradley Beal, which makes sense really for everybody. And I have thoughts on Bradley Beal I'm going to get to in a second, but let's just say I thought the Bradley Beal deal was not a good deal for Phoenix in the first place. And of course, the last couple of years, last year and a half or so, have been a disaster for the Suns. But Bradley Beal is very likely to be bought out. He'll become an unrestricted free agent, and the team acquiring him can sign him to a vet minimum contract because I should say he likely will sign a vet minimum contract. Very likely what would happen is he would be bought out, which means that the Suns aren't necessarily going to be paying that contract, but he would be an unrestricted free agent, could do whatever he wants. Obviously, he gets compensated as part of that buyout. So it's a little different than a guy being waived and another team picking him up, in which case they would assume his contract. It's different than long story short, whoever acquires him could get him for the vet minimum, but he also could seek a little bit more money elsewhere. So we'll talk about some of the suitors for him, but there are teams that have mid-level exceptions available that may be more likely than a team like the Wolves to sign Bradley Beal. But the short answer is it's possible because he will be an unrestricted free agent, assuming he gets bought out. And the Wolves obviously have roster spots. We talked about this on yesterday's show, on Monday's show. They've got 2 roster spots to play with, and they are looking for somebody who can initiate some offense. We'll get into that in a second. The report for Jake Fisher is that Bradley Beal, when he becomes an unrestricted free agent, if and when, he's drawing interest from many of the same teams that also are interested in Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Malcolm Brogdon. And I'll talk a little bit more about Malcolm Brogdon later. That's the one other name that the Wolves have specifically been linked to. Of those three, they have not been linked at all to Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook from anybody that has any real person, like a real rumor, right? A real sourced rumor. I talked about in the show, the Wolves, how they should have interest in Malcolm Brogdon. And since I've talked about that a little over a week ago, it has been reported elsewhere that they are interested in him. So many of those same teams that have interest in CP3, Russ, or Brogdon also would have interest in Bradley Beal, which is part of the reason that the markets for Paul, Westbrook, and Brogdon have stalled is maybe a strong word, but nothing's happened. Those guys are still free agents because teams are trying to see what happens with Bradley Beal. The teams listed here by Jake Fisher are the Clippers, Lakers, Bucks, and Timberwolves. Teams who are expected to have interest in signing Bradley Beal if and when he signs or agrees to, I should say, a buyout agreement. There's another report that cited the Warriors as a possibility for Bradley Beal. That report was from Grant Avseth of RG.org. So Clippers, Lakers, Bucks, Timberwolves, possibly the Warriors would have interest. In this, Fisher also points out that the Clippers and Bucks are interested in Chris Paul. Brogdon, Fisher reports this as well. So I mentioned the Wolves had been interested or had been mentioned previously as interested in Brogdon. And Fisher does say Clippers, Suns, Lakers, Warriors, Timberwolves, and Bucks have registered some level of interest in Brogdon as well as the Pelicans and Kings. So all that to say, the potential Bradley Beal market is affecting the jockeying of position for Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Malcolm Brogdon among teams that include the Clippers, Lakers, Bucks, and Wolves, all of whom fancy themselves as contenders. The argument could certainly be made the Wolves are the best team of the four. Of course, they went further than any of them in the playoffs. They beat the Lakers in the playoffs. The Bucks are repositioned now after the Lillard injury and the sign and trade to acquire Miles Turner. They're in a very different spot than they were. Of course, still having Giannis, still potentially an attractive place to play. The Lakers with Luka Doncic and an aging and potentially somewhat unhappy LeBron James, and then the LA Clippers and whatever they're doing with their oft injured, group of guys that play there for the Clippers. Like just this rotating cast of like Bradley Beal fits right in with, obviously Paul George isn't there anymore, but the Paul Georges and the James Hardens and the Kawhi Leonards, these oft injured wings and guards. Like this fits, right? I want to talk a little bit about Bradley Beal's fit in Minnesota, what I think that could look like, and whether or not the Wolves should go for Bradley Beal. I have a few pros and cons, and I clearly have a position on Bradley Beal, and I'll tell you what it is right now. I think he's often been overrated. I think he's almost always been overrated. I think the idea of Bradley Beal has always been better than the actual production of Bradley Beal. That said, I'm not going to sit here and say Bradley Beal on a vet minimum contract is a bad idea, because I think that's also an overreaction the other direction. So I'll give the pros and cons. I'll give you my measured take, what I believe is a measured take, not a hot take, a measured take on if Bradley Beal should end up in a Timberwolves uniform or if that would be a good thing for Minnesota, the pros and cons of such a move. And then I'll talk a little bit more about Malcolm Brogdon. It's been a little over a week since we mentioned him on the show, and I still think that he would be a nice fit for Minnesota. So we'll talk about both those guys. We'll peek ahead to Summer League. Once again, we'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. The app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It is easy to use, the app. They're fast to pay out. They even make regular season games feel like must-watch events, which I'm a huge baseball fan, but that's not always the case for baseball, right? It's not do or die every single game. There's 162 of them. The Twins, the Wolves, the Twins just won 2 out of 3 over the weekend. They're still kind of in a bit of a tough spot. Believe it or not, they're in second in their division, and still have a shot to make the playoffs at this stage. The AllStar break's coming up next week. Maybe you're placing the same game parlay, or you're just going to watch a bet right into the 9th inning. You're just going to sit on it, see what happens. FanDuel will make it feel like you're part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay. So Bradley Beal in a Timberwolves uniform, what could that look like? Well, I'll give you my pros and cons. Well, okay, I'll give you my pros and cons. I guess before I do that, the Wolves, right now, the way the roster is constructed, I spent a ton of time on this Monday, but in short, they're trying to fill the Nickeil Alexander-Walker role. They're trying to fill a backup point guard role, which basically was the Nah role last year. They were one and the same because they didn't have a true backup point guard since Rob Dillingham didn't regularly get rotation minutes. And they also need to fill the Luka Garza roster spot. It's not a rotation role. Their big man rotation set. It's Julius Randle. It's Rudy Gobert. It's Reid. They don't have room for another big in the rotation, but they need to fill that role, and they need to add another big. They have 2 roster spots that are open. One must be filled, but they have 2 that are open. So, is Bradley Beal a point guard or a big? No, he's not. He has played some point guard. He has initiated some offense. He certainly had to do that in the weird Phoenix lineups we've seen over the last couple of years where they didn't really have centers they trusted. They didn't have point guards they trusted. So Bradley Beal played a lot of point guard. It was, I think, part of the problem, however, with Bradley Beal, a huge part of the problem. Bradley Beal was legit good in Washington. Like, I'm not sitting here saying he was never good. He's a 3-time All-Star. He was All-NBA third team one year. He averaged 30-plus points a game twice. That's all true. However, the whole thing with Bradley Beal coming out, being drafted by Washington in 2012, 3rd overall, was that he was supposed to have a shot like Ray Allen. He was supposed to be this absolute sharpshooter. Over his first few years, he was hovering around 39, 40%, which is really good, but he was never like the best shooter in the league. And then since then, he shot less threes and more mid-range shots, and the three-point percentage went way down. Like over his first 5 seasons, up until 2017, he was 39.9% from 3. So a 40% three-point shooter. Since then, he's 36%. So Bradley Beal is a league average, actually slightly worse than league average three-point shooter since 2017. And again, the volume from 3 has actually gone down for Bradley Beal. Like he hasn't attempted, last year attempted 5 per game. He hasn't attempted more than 5 threes per game since 2021-22. So his second to last year in Washington. In addition to that, since he got to Phoenix, he initiated some offense toward the end of his career in Washington, the end of his time in Washington. He spent 11 years there, which is crazy. It doesn't feel like it was that long. But he was asked to handle the ball a little bit more with Phoenix because, remember, they didn't have a point guard. So it was like him and Kevin Durant basically running things. It's why they signed Tyus Jones and Monte Morris last year, a couple of former Timberwolves. And Bradley Beal he's not a point guard. Like he can initiate offense, but it takes away from what he actually can do best. And teams can load up and they know what Bradley Beal's trying to do. So that hasn't been beneficial to his offensive game. Also, the free throw rate has gone way down since he's been in Phoenix. He's spent 2 years in Phoenix, played 53 games in his first year there, which ended in a first round sweep to Minnesota. And then he played 53 games again last year. So 53 games each season. The assist rate last year, despite playing more point guard, was actually his lowest assist rate since 2016-17. And his free throw rate, each of the last 2 years, was the first time it was below a 0.2 since 2014-15, his age 21 season 10 years ago. And if you're not familiar with free throw rate, it's the number of free throw attempts per field goal attempt. So that meant for every field goal attempt, he was getting 0.2 free throw attempts, or he got a free throw attempt for, on 20% of his field goal attempts. Every year prior, there were 10 years in between there, it was above a 0.2. And the last 2 years, it's been below a 0.2. That's not good for a guy that's a combo guard, that's a primary 2 guard. He's just not getting to the rim very often. He's not drawing a lot of fouls. His percentage of shots within 3 feet was the lowest since his second season in the league, his age 20 season last year. The other thing is the durability. He has not played in more than 60 games since 2018-19. So before the first COVID season. So 2019, pre-COVID, 6 years ago. He's gone 6 seasons since the last time he played at least 60 games. And that he had played two straight years where he played a full 82-game season. But he has not been durable for the last 6 years. Those are the cons, okay? Now, the pros, and there are real pros. He's still an all-star caliber scorer. I chose those words intentionally and carefully. He's a bad defender. We didn't even talk about that. He's a bad defender. That's always really always kind of been the case with Bradley Beal, although it's gotten worse since he's gotten banged up. There were a couple pretty bad years in there defensively for him around when he was getting the all-star accolades, but he certainly has gotten worse. That's a problem. The offense, the scoring is still real. Like, the dude can still score. He can still get a shot off. He's still a good mid-range shooter. That is all true. And I don't want to lose sight of that. And here's the thing. If the Wolves were to get him, it would be on a vet minimum deal. There's nobody else out there that's as good as him on a vet minimum deal. There's just not. He was over 50% from 10 to 16 feet last season, which was he shot 14% of his shots from there. So actually a little bit less than what he did at the rim. But if you take everything within 16 feet, like, he shot 38% of his shots from three, only 12% of his shots from the long mid-range, which surprised me a little. But he got to that 3 to 16-foot range, kind of, it's what Kevin Durant does, right? And more than a quarter of his shots were between 3 and 16 feet last season. And he's really good from there. He was almost 54% from 3 to 10 feet. It was actually a career high last year from 3 to 10 feet percentage-wise. From 10 to 16 feet, also career high, over 50%. So, if you're okay with the fact that he's at best a league average three-point shooter, and I know he was a little better last year, but overall, over the last, 6-7 years, he's league average from three. If you're okay with that, and the fact that he's really good from between 3 and 16 feet, you're not going to do better on a vet minimum contract. You're just not. There's nobody else out there that's going to be able to score at the clip. 17 a game last year, 18 a game the year before. He's only 5 years removed from a 30-point per game season. He's going to be 32. He's not 37, right? I'd be totally fine if Minnesota got Bradley Beal in a vet minimum contract, as long as those expectations are managed. Obviously, for the fans, like, he's not an all-star anymore. He's just not. He's not going to be. And he's got to know he wouldn't start on this team. You're not starting Bradley Beal next to Anthony Edwards. That doesn't make any sense. You're not going to start him in the backcourt as your point guard. Don't do it. I don't think they would, but don't do it. If you want him to come off the bench as your sixth man, fine. I think that's fine. I think he can play the Nikhil role. Your defense is going to take a hit. It absolutely will, and that's all baked in. The offense will improve. Beal and Ant on the floor together would be effective because teams would not be able to load up on Ant the way that they currently do. They won't be able to the floor won't bend as far as it does toward Anthony Edwards as it currently does. Now, I do have some concerns with an Ant, Julius, Randle, Bradley, Beal trio, and the spacing there. I mean, Ant has to be the spacer in that situation, and then you have Rudy Gobert on the floor there, and like there's just a lot going on, kind of in the middle of the floor, which is a lot of times what the issue was with Phoenix. And by the way, like for all the people that really wanted the Wolves to get Kevin Durant, which would have been nice if they hadn't, the pros to that. We talked about that on the show, but like Kevin Durant was supposed to be spacing for Bradley Beal and Devin Booker in Phoenix, and that didn't really work out. Yes, there were coaching issues clearly, but like I worry about Bradley Beal's consistency on both ends of the floor, and I worry about how he and Ant would play off each other and how healthy that would be. It would be a risk because what if some of the bad Bradley Beal habits on both ends of the floor bring down Anthony Edwards? Is that worth it? It's a vet minimum contract. Could you pivot quickly? Is this like, oh shoot, we're a couple dozen games in and Beal is dragging down Ant. Can we just cut him? Like if that's kind of baked in here, fine. Like I guess if that's one of your pivots that you might need to go to, fine. But I think it if they know the guy and they think that Bradley Beal would be fine from a locker room and on the court standpoint with his habits, etc., you're not going to do better on a vet minimum contract. And he's going to be every bit as good of a distributor of a point guard if you need him to be that off the bench as Nick Alexander-Walker was. He's going to be a lot worse defensively and better offensively. It would be a net positive, I think. Now, then you're also like, you're back, Alexander Walker's gone, And now those minutes are Rob Dillingham's still on the roster. Like, neither of those guys are defensive guys. And now you're slowly starting to lose the guys that can bring that defense. It's kind of the opposite of Jalen Clark. Like, you live with some of the absence of offense and creation and stuff with Jalen, but the defense is going to be there. So I don't know. Like, if Bradley Beal ended up with it on the Timberwolves on a vet minimum deal, I'd be excited. I think he'd be a really fun out off the bench as long as he knows that's the deal. But I'm not going to be heartbroken if it doesn't happen, because there's very real concerns there. And I think both are true. I really think both are true. Like, a vet minimum, Bradley Beal off the bench is a nice player, a really, really nice, actually a great value. It really is. But let's not pretend like there's not risk, and let's not pretend like he's still an all-star, because he's not. I still think it's more likely he ends up somewhere like the Clippers, who just traded Norman Powell on Monday morning. So they're going to have a role that he could fill, and they could pay him more. They could pay him. I believe they still have their mid-level. So I think that's more likely. Maybe a team like the Lakers, but I think that's more likely. Minnesota is probably more likely than Milwaukee. I feel like the Timberwolves situation is more attractive than the Bucks, although he would get more run with Milwaukee. He would start there, but plays the same position as Anthony Edwards. And you're not putting those guys together defensively. You're not going to not start Jaden McDaniels. You're not starting Julius Randle or Rudy Gobert. And you're not going to start him in the backcourt and bench Mike Conley. I mean, you could bench Mike Conley, but you're not going to start Beal and Ant together to start games. I just don't think you're going to do that. I want to talk a little bit more about Malcolm Brogdon as an option, who I like Malcolm Brogdon's fit better than I like Bradley Beal's fit. I'll explain why here next. All right, why do I like Malcolm Brogdon on the Timberwolves more than I like Bradley Beal on the Timberwolves? Well, I'm glad you asked. Malcolm Brogdon is a better three-point shooter. It kind of comes down to that. It's not the only reason, but that's the easiest reason. He's 39% for his career. He's a 38.8% three-point shooter for his career. Bradley Beal's 37.6%. And again, he's 36% since 2017, which includes his 3 All-Star seasons mixed in there. So we think of Bradley Beal as this great shooter. Malcolm Brogdon's a better shooter than Bradley Beal. He's going to shoot less mid-range shots. A higher percentage of his shots are going to come from 3. He can initiate the offense more as a true point guard. Malcolm Brogdon has played point guard. He came into the league basically thought of as a point guard. Has played a lot of point guard. Is going to be a better initiator of the offense. Has a higher career assist rate than Bradley Beal. Really is a true combo guard, whereas Bradley Beal is not. Bradley Beal's career assist rate is a little over 20%. Malcolm Brogdon's is almost 24.5%. And then the expectations thing. I spent some time last segment talking about this, but if Bradley Beal comes in, is he going to expect to get however many shots a game? Is he going to expect to be the guy when he's in the game? Playoff of Ant, whatever. Malcolm Brogdon doesn't need to be. Malcolm Brogdon is okay, very likely, playing point guard and being he's not going to be a top 2 option on this team. He knows that. Now, let's not pretend like he also hasn't been a scorer. Remember, he won 6th Man of the Year a couple years ago with Boston, and he's averaged as many as 21 points per game. But I think 33-year-old Malcolm Brogdon, who also, to be fair, he's also had injury issues. I talked about how Beal hadn't played in 60 or more games since 2019. Well, Malcolm Brogdon hasn't since 2018-19, and he's never played since his rookie season, he's only played more than 60 games twice. He played 67 games for Boston when he won 6th Man of the Year a couple years ago, and he played 64 games for Milwaukee back in 18-19. So obviously, durability is an issue for both of these guys. But Bradley Beal, I feel like, still thinks he is an all-star. Whereas Malcolm Brogdon, maybe he still thinks he's the 6th Man of the Year, but guess what? He's going to be coming off the bench anyway. So if he wants to provide that punch off the bench, great. I think he can do it and also play make for others, and he'll do it at a more efficient clip as a better three-point shooter than Bradley Beal, as the shot selection being better and being a better fit for Minnesota. I think the combination of better efficiency and shot selection and accuracy from three is more attractive. And also, don't look now, but he actually gets to the line more often at this stage of his career than Bradley Beal does. Remember, Brad Beal hasn't been to the line or hasn't had a free throw rate above 0.2 in, what did I say, 9 years, something like that. Malcolm Brogdon has only had a free throw rate under 0.2 once since 2017-18. So once over the last 7 years. So Brogdon, I think, checks more boxes than Bradley Beal. They're both bad defenders. I think Brogdon probably competes more on that end, and a healthy Malcolm Brogdon is likely a better defender than a healthy Bradley Beal. Either way, we're talking about 33 years old for Malcolm Brogdon and 32 for Bradley Beal. Guys who've been injured a lot. I get that. But I think the point guard-ness and the probably lower expectation in terms of what he thinks he can provide from a usage and an actual scoring standpoint makes Malcolm Brogdon a more attractive addition than Bradley Beal. And I know that the ceiling for Bradley Beal is higher. I get it. But I just think the floor and the tailspin and collapse of the entire offense and defense and I guess team, which is maybe, I don't think I'd be unfair to Bradley Beal. I mean, look at what happened in Phoenix, right? That likelihood is far greater if you have Bradley Beal on your roster than if you have Malcolm Brogdon on your roster. I truly believe that. So all things equal, I would be more excited if the Wolves got Malcolm Brogdon at the vet minimum than if they got Bradley Beal. But I would also not be like, hey, Bradley Beal is going to sink the team for sure. Hear me when I say the possibility of him sinking the team is much greater if they have his sinkability rating, if you will, is greater than what Malcolm Brogdon's would be. He's also got a higher ceiling, and I'm not saying that he would sink the team if they got him. Okay, all of these things can be true. So please hear me when I say that. This isn't a hot take. I'm not saying Bradley Beal tanks the Wolves. I just think that the Wolves with Malcolm Brogdon are a more balanced team that is less likely to collapse on itself like a dying star than a Timberwolves team with Bradley Beal would. All right, next up for the Summer League, we talked about this a bunch on Friday, and we'll do a lot more Summer League talk actually the next 2 days, Wednesday and then Thursday, getting you ready for Thursday afternoon's first game of the Las Vegas Summer League for the Timberwolves entry in Vegas. So if you want the full roster rundown, I did that on Friday's show, so 2 shows before this one. Go check that out. And we'll talk a bit more the next 2 days about what to watch for in Vegas. That will be the focus of the shows on Wednesday and Thursday. The Wolves schedule looks as follows. They take on the Pelicans Summer League team Thursday afternoon at 2:30. That's an ESPN2 game. ESPN2 at 2:30 Central on Thursday. They're off Friday, and then they play 9 p.m. Saturday night. So, yes, if you want to stay home and spend your Saturday night watching Summer League basketball, you can do that. And apparently it's on FanDuel Sports Network North. So there you go. Saturday, 9 p.m. against the Nuggets Summer League team, also on NBA TV. My guess is just outside the Twin Cities. And then off Sunday and Monday before they play Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. against Detroit. Games also on FanDuel Sports North and NBA TV. And then a Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. Central game against Phoenix on FanDuel Sports Network and NBA TV. So they have Thursday, 1 day off, Saturday, 2 days off, and then back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday. And I believe they're still doing the thing where depending on how your record and then your point differential, points for, I think it's just point differential is the next thing. Then it goes to, there's like a bracket play based on that, or you get like a quote-unquote loser's bracket pool game or whatever they call it. So they'll get at least 5 games in Vegas, but I think no more than 7 if I remember right. But that's your 4 that are on the schedule right now. Wednesday and Thursday will get you ready for Summer League action. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, we do this every day, Monday through Friday. And you can also listen anywhere. You can watch on YouTube. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.